Garry Kasparov had spent his entire life playing chess, and no human had ever played the game better, or so fiercely. But at last, Kasparov ran into an opponent he couldn't intimidate, Deep Blue. No matter how fiercely Kasparov played, Deep Blue never blinked. Kasparov won their first match, but the world was shocked when he lost the very first game. The human tried to outcalculate the computer, and the human came up a move short. Here's the first victory ever recorded by a computer in tournament play against a human world champion. Deep Blue starts off with pawn to e4. I was happy to see that Deep Blue agrees with me about my favorite opening move. Kasparov chooses the complicated Sicilian defense. I prefer to teach my students to play the classic pawn to e5. Deep Blue continues with pawn to c3. This move supports the central advance, pawn to d4. A pawn center will deprive the enemy pieces of good central squares. With his next move, Kasparov challenges Deep Blue's center and opens lines for his pieces. Next, there was an exchange of pawns in the center. Normally, one shouldn't move the queen this early. It could become a target, but it's okay here because Deep Blue can't use this knight to attack the queen. There's a pawn in the way. Deep Blue fights for control of the center with pawn to d4. For the next few moves, both sides correctly bring out their knights and bishops. With the following move, Deep Blue demonstrates how effective pawns can be in chasing enemy pieces off good squares. White castles kingside. Even though Deep Blue may not know that it's up against the greatest attacking player of all time, it still understands that packing the king off to a safe corner is a good idea. Kasparov continues his development with knight to c6. Another pawn exchange is looming. That will relieve some of the tension in the center. The bishop can now wield its power along two unobstructed diagonals. This move serves the dual purpose of developing a piece and attacking Kasparov's queen. To be effective, a knight needs a support point, an advanced square where it can safely rest while casting a menacing shadow over the board. The move played also exposes Kasparov's bishop to the might of Deep Blue's queen-bishop battery. Both sides have opened the game very well. All their minor pieces have been placed on good squares, and their kings have been tucked safely away. Now they concentrate on improving the positions of their pieces, especially the rooks. The rook is a long-range piece. It does its best work on an open file, where it can blast its way into the enemy position. Pinning the knight. Kasparov repositions his bishop to b6. Kasparov's target is Deep Blue's pawn on d4. This pawn is weak because it's isolated, meaning the other white pawns are too far away to defend it. Deep Blue decides to exchange its bishop for Kasparov's knight. Kasparov must recapture the bishop. I'm sure that Kasparov wasn't happy about tearing up his king's position, But he had no alternative. If instead queen captures on f6, then knight to d7 would fork black's queen and rook. Kasparov has two pieces attacking the lonely d-pawn. Deep blue only has one defending. But should the human get greedy and grab it, disaster would result. Let's say he grabs that pawn with his knight. Deep blue captures the knight. Kasparov must recapture with his bishop. Then deep blue has a shot that refutes black's greedy play. Queen to g4, check. This attacks the black king and the black bishop. The king must get out of check, and then deep blue wins the bishop. Therefore, Kasparov calls for reinforcements. Kasparov's pawn structure has been weakened because of all his doubled pawns. Over the next few moves, both sides attempt to improve the positions of their queens. White boldly advances with pawn to d5. Deep blue jettisons its weak pawn, attempting to win the b6 pawn with the queen. But if deep blue immediately grabs the pawn on b6, then Kasparov would play queen takes b2. Now we've reached the crucial moment in the game. Black must decide on a plan. Kasparov thought for a long time and made a very surprising move. Kasparov is intending an assault on the white king. The black king steps off the g-file so that the black rook can take up station there. However, your human champion was trying to attack too quickly here. He made a tactical oversight which cost him dearly in the end. Rook to d8 would have been better. The tension builds as Kasparov shifts his artillery to the king side. Deep blue's queen has wiped out a hapless pawn and now stands ready to bolster the defense or ignite a counterattack. Kasparov banks all his hopes on his kingside attack, abandoning the center to white. With Kasparov advancing on the white king, Deep Blue's next move astonished many onlookers. Deep Blue sees so far ahead, it believes it has time to pick off another pawn before repelling Kasparov's attack. No human player would have even considered this move, but Deep Blue is no human player. Meanwhile, continuing his build-up, Kasparov activates another piece with knight to e5. So what's really going on here? Let's stop a moment and look. In this position, Kasparov had intended to play queen to f4. That would have given him two threats. Queen captures on c1, check. And rook captures on g3, check. Pawn takes f4 is not possible, because then white's king would be in check. However, Kasparov suddenly realized that the computer has an incredible reply, unforeseen by any of the human spectators. Rook to c8. Stopping the attack cold, because if Kasparov takes the brave white rook, the black queen dies at the hands of the unpinned pawn. So Kasparov now sees that his planned attack will fail, and is forced to try to find a new route to the enemy king. But it's too late, as Deep Blue mobilizes its forces for an unstoppable counterattack. Kasparov makes one last attempt to salvage his game. Check. Though the human is threatening checkmate with rook to h1, Deep Blue's attack is one step ahead of Kasparov's. Check. 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 Here Kasparov gave up, conceding the first game of the match to Deep Blue. Had he continued with the only available move, king to g6, his position would collapse after queen to g8. Check. King to f5. Knight captures on f3, and white has too many threats. For example, the rest of the game might have gone like this. Rook to e7. Queen to d5. Check. King to g6. Queen to h5. Checkmate. The game of chess changed forever the moment Kasparov resigned. Even the greatest human players knew they'd have to watch out for us now. Way to go, Blue.